Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm Darren McBreen. It is Friday, August 29th, 2014. Here's a quick look what's coming up.
Tonight,
if you want to preserve your power indefinitely, you have to get the consent of the ruled.
Huxley and Bernays would be proud. A look at the PSYOP war. And as the Cold War heats up, Putin issues a warning. All that and more on tonight's InfoWars Nightly News.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yesterday, the Washington Post reported that 2 armored Russian columns have captured the southeastern coastal town of Novozovsk. Now, that's basically right there on the Russian border. They are saying that the Ukrainian military has retreated and that the Russians have invaded the Ukraine. Meanwhile, the New York Times is reporting that U.S. officials have photographs of Russian artillery moving into the Ukraine, setting up firing positions. But before we hit the panic button, let's stop, let's take a deep breath and take a good look at where all this information is coming from, because to be honest, some of this information sounds like a load of BS. Consider the source. The New York Times says U.S. officials showed them satellite images of the invasion, but they won't publish the pictures. I guess we're supposed to take their word for it. And keep in mind that this is the same New York Times reporter, Michael Gordon, who along with Judith Miller, they're the ones that wrote all those bogus articles about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Remember that? Iraq has WMDs. It's not something we think, it's something we know. And they had all these fancy graphics showing that Iraq was in possession of mobile bioweapons labs. Colin Powell, as you might recall, he used the same graphics for his UN address, which ultimately led to the Iraq War in 2003. The mobile weapons labs were totally discredited. Colin Powell himself even admitted that he was persuaded by faulty intelligence. Yeah, right. And now we know that there was never any weapons of mass destruction discovered in Iraq.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
And that was the worst president in U.S. history until now. Now, don't get me wrong, what's happening in the Ukraine is real, and it is escalating, but what we're looking at is a civil war. It is a civil war that's between the government of Western Ukraine and the Russian population of Eastern Ukraine. And once again, the United States government and NATO are up in everyone's business and caught up right in the middle. In fact, it was the U.S. orchestrated overthrow of the elected government in the Ukraine that has really pushed this crisis into high gear. Now, in an article written today that's posted right now on Infowars.com, it was written by the father of Reaganomics, Paul Craig Roberts. He says that the Russian people of eastern Ukraine are resisting the threat brought to them by Washington's puppet government in Kiev. Washington continually accuses the Russian government of supporting the people in the territories who have voted for their separation from the Ukraine. There would be no war, Washington alleges, except for Russian support. But of course, Washington could easily stop the violence by ordering its puppet government in Kiev to stop the bombing and shelling of the former Russian province. The only possible conclusion from the facts is that Washington, the Obama administration and NATO, is determined to involve Europe in a war with Russia. Now you can hit the alarm button, because this is a very serious game that they are playing. I tell you what, I think that this is a modern-day Cuban Missile Crisis. And I tell you who else isn't very happy about U.S. involvement, intervention, and the overthrow of the Ukraine, and that is Vladimir Putin. In fact, right now, there is breaking news on Infowars.com that includes a feature article from Reuters where Putin says, "You better not mess with nuclear Russia." He blames the United States and the European Union for the unconstitutional removal of Kiev's former Moscow-backed president and the replacement of the Western-backed puppet. Now, here's a quote from Putin. Small villages and large cities surrounding the Ukrainian army, which is directly hitting residential areas with the aim of destroying infrastructure, it sadly reminds me of the events of the Second World War when German fascist occupiers surrounded our cities. Wow, so he is comparing the orchestrated U.S. takeover of the Ukraine with the Nazi takeover of Leningrad back in World War II. This is how serious Russia is taking this right now. They're taking it very serious, and they consider it a direct threat. Putin even went as far as reminding everyone, and I'm going to quote him again here, "I want to remind you that Russia is one of the leading nuclear powers." So a modern Cuban Missile Crisis indeed.
The facts are in. The studies are legion. Sodium fluoride and other toxic members of the fluoride family are devastating the health and cognitive ability of the American people. So why are the social engineers adding it to the water? Simple. Dumb down the host population that the parasitic technocracy is feeding on. We may not have been able to get fluoride out of the water supply yet, but we can help to get it out of our bodies. I am extremely excited to announce the exclusive InfoWars Life Fluoride Shield formulation, fusing 6 of the best documented ingredients from around the world to help the body remove not just toxic fluoride residues from the body, but a whole host of toxic substances. Let's take a stand against the globalists by blocking their poisons with Fluoride Shield. I use Fluoride Shield every day. Secure your Fluoride Shield and other pioneering formulations at InfoWarsLife.com today. Let's start cleansing our bodies now and support the InfoWar at the same time. That's InfoWarsLife.com.